It started with a knock on the door, just 3 harmless taps in the middle of a quiet afternoon. But within minutes, my wife was being dragged into an SUV by 2 men pretending to be HOA officers. They had fake badges, fake uniforms, and a fake reason. What they didn't know was that my wife wasn't just a suburban tech consultant. She was a top-level FBI analyst. And in less than 10 minutes, this quiet little neighborhood turned into the center of a federal takedown. What happened next unraveled a secret network so dangerous, so twisted, it could have compromised national security. And it all started right here, in our driveway. It was just past 4 p.m. on a warm Thursday afternoon in Cedar Valley, a quiet, tree-lined suburb just outside Seattle. The kind of neighborhood where people waved at each other during dog walks, where sprinklers ticked rhythmically across neatly trimmed lawns, and where excitement usually meant a lost cat or a bake sale gone wrong. Thomas Whitaker had just sat down on the porch with a glass of iced tea, enjoying the calm after a long work-from-home day. His wife, Elise, was inside humming softly while preparing a pie for their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Bennett. Then, the knock came. 3 sharp raps on the front door. Thomas stood up, puzzled. Not many people knocked in Cedar Valley anymore, everyone texted. He opened the door to find 2 men in crisp navy uniforms standing on the porch. They wore badges that read Cedar Valley HOA Enforcement and held clipboards with what looked like official paperwork. "Good afternoon, sir," the taller one said, his voice clipped and authoritative. "We're here on urgent HOA business. We need to speak with your wife, Elise Whitaker." Thomas blinked. "Excuse me? About what?" The second man stepped forward, tone sharper. "She's in violation of a serious neighborhood regulation. We're placing her under administrative detention." Thomas frowned. "Detention? What the hell are you talking about? We don't have any enforcement unit like that. HOA's just a volunteer board. We've been granted temporary authority for special investigations," the tall one said smoothly. "Please, don't interfere." From behind Thomas, Elise appeared, wiping flour from her hands, still wearing her apron. "Is something wrong?" she asked calmly. "There you are, Mom," said the shorter man, stepping toward her. "You're coming with us. Now." Thomas moved to block them. "You're not taking her anywhere. Not without a real reason. And some real proof." The taller man's hand twitched toward his belt, where a black, unmarked holster sat. "Step aside, sir. This is official HOA business." And just like that, the serene calm of Cedar Valley shattered. Elise didn't flinch. She stood in the doorway of her own home, hands dusted with flour, apron tied neatly at the waist, the scent of cinnamon and nutmeg still clinging to the air around her. From the outside, she looked every bit the quintessential suburban wife, calm, kind, and maybe a little too fond of baking. But the 2 men standing on her porch had no idea who they were dealing with. "Mom," the taller man barked, stepping forward with false authority, "you're in direct violation of several community codes, including the installation of unauthorized surveillance equipment and possible data interference within the HOA network. You're coming with us. Now." Elise tilted her head slightly. "Surveillance equipment? I think you have the wrong house." Thomas's voice surged from behind her. "This is ridiculous. There's no such thing as an HOA enforcement squad. Where's your warrant? Who gave you the authority to?" The second man, stockier and twitchier, interrupted sharply. "Sir, step back. This doesn't concern you." One of the men reached out and grabbed Elise's wrist, not roughly, but with enough force to signal he wasn't bluffing. And still, she didn't resist. Instead, she met his eyes with a cool, measured stare. "You should be more careful," she said softly. "Pretending to be someone you're not has consequences." He scoffed. "We'll take our chances." They began leading her toward the black SUV idling at the curb, an unmarked vehicle with a fake decal slapped on the side, Cedar Valley HOA Enforcement Division. At first glance, it might pass for real, but the cheap vinyl lettering was peeling at the corners. And the number listed on the door was one digit off from the real HOA hotline. As she was guided into the back seat, Elise subtly shifted her right thumb beneath the hem of her apron. Her movements were invisible to the eye, just a light press against a reinforced seam. Click, a soft vibration pulsed against her skin. Barely noticeable. That's all it took. The panic signal had been triggered. Built into her clothing was a hidden micro device, a custom pressure switch hardwired to transmit a silent distress beacon to the FBI's rapid response unit. No alarms. No lights. No sound. Just a single data packet firing into encrypted FBI servers with her exact GPS location and a red alert. OPSEC breach, priority 1, immediate extraction required. Only Elise, and a select few within the bureau, even knew the protocol existed. Inside the SUV, the door slammed shut behind her. The windows were heavily tinted, and the air smelled faintly of stale coffee and vinyl. She glanced around, mentally cataloguing everything: model of the vehicle, scuff marks on the floor, a duffel bag tucked under the passenger seat, no partition between front and back. Rookie mistake. Thomas was shouting from the driveway now. This is kidnapping. You can't just take someone without telling us who you are. But the engine roared to life, drowning him out. Elise sat still, silent, observant. Her eyes flicked from the men's silhouettes in the front seat to the street ahead, memorizing every turn, every noise, every possible way out. Her breathing stayed slow and steady. On the outside, she looked helpless. On the inside, she was calculating. Because Elise Whittaker, though she never carried a gun and rarely left a digital trail, was one of the FBI's most skilled analysts in cyber espionage and domestic infiltration response. She'd cracked encrypted networks used by international arms dealers, traced data leaks through layers of dark web proxy chains, and ghosted cartel surveillance systems with nothing but a laptop and a satellite link. And now, she'd just become a target. That meant only one thing: someone had found out who she was. Or at least, they thought they had. As the SUV rolled deeper into Cedar Valley, Elise leaned her head against the window, letting her eyes wander to the neighbors watching from behind curtains, to the dog walker who paused mid-stride, phone already out. She wasn't just seeing them, she was communicating. Notice this, remember this. Something is wrong. The clock had started. And somewhere, not far from here, a black SUV with real government plates was already turning onto the highway, on its way to collect what was theirs. The SUV had barely rolled 20 feet when the quiet suburb of Cedar Valley erupted into chaos. From the far end of the cul-de-sac, two black government-issued SUVs came screeching around the corner. No sirens, no lights, just the unmistakable urgency of vehicles that didn't stop for stop signs. Their tires kicked up dust as they veered to a halt in a V formation, blocking the street. The imposter officers, Miller in the driver's seat, Crane riding shotgun, Frowse. Thomas, still standing on the lawn, could only stare as four figures emerged from the black SUVs, weapons holstered but ready, movements sharp and controlled. They wore no uniforms, but everything about them screamed training, precision, federal authority. Leading them was Special Agent Sandra Monroe, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair tied back in a tight braid and a presence that could freeze fire. She wore dark sunglasses despite the fading sun and moved with the commanding presence of someone used to walking into hostile territory and taking control. With one sharp motion, she raised a hand. Everyone stepped back. FBI rapid response. We're handling this. The neighbors who had gathered on porches, lawns, and driveways gasped in unison. Phones were raised, recording every second. Among them, a teenager named Aidan stood in his front yard, live streaming everything to his hundreds of followers on TikTok, not realizing he was broadcasting a federal sting operation in real time. Inside the fake HOA SUV, Elise sat motionless, eyes locked forward. When she saw Sandra, a slow, almost imperceptible smile curved her lips. Help had arrived. Crane reached for the door handle, trying to bolt. "Bad idea," Monroe barked, already signaling her team. Two agents closed in. One tackled Crane the moment he hit the pavement. He went down hard, cursing. But the agent was on him in seconds. Knee in his back. Zip ties cinched around his wrists. Miller fumbled with the gear shift, trying to reverse, but the FBI vehicles had boxed him in tight. Before he could even open his door, another agent yanked it wide. Gun drawn but steady. "Hands where I can see them. Now." Miller raised both arms, stammering. "This is a misunderstanding. We were just impersonating federal authority and abducting a protected asset." Monroe cut him off. "Save it for your lawyer." Within moments, both men were cuffed and pushed against the SUV. Elise was gently helped out by an agent who whispered something only she could hear. She nodded, her face unreadable. Thomas rushed toward her, heart pounding. "You okay?" he asked, grabbing her hands. "I'm fine," Elise replied calmly. But this is just the beginning. In the hours that followed the takedown, Cedar Valley transformed from a sleepy suburb into a crime scene swarming with federal agents, local police, and media vans hungry for a scoop. But behind the flashing lights and frantic speculation, something much deeper, and darker, was beginning to unfold. Within a secure mobile command unit parked down the block, FBI analysts pored over the seized equipment from the fake HOA SUV, burner phones, a scrambled GPS tablet, and a duffel bag containing surveillance gear disguised as everyday electronics. What they found sent chills down Agent Sandra Monroe's spine. This wasn't just a one-off operation, she told Elise and Thomas in a quiet debrief hours later. These men are part of a larger, well-funded network. The FBI's early findings revealed a highly sophisticated criminal ring specializing in identity theft and espionage. Their method was deceptively simple: pose as HOA officials, gain access to quiet, middle to upper-class neighborhoods, and exploit the trust of unsuspecting residents. But their true target wasn't lawn violations or fence heights, it was government personnel living undercover. Like Elise, these people use fake bylaws and made-up inspections as cover to get inside homes. Monroe explained. Once inside, they plant listening devices, clone Wi-Fi routers, even access smart home systems. It's subtle, surgical, and efficient. The data they collected, email passwords, federal credentials, classified travel logs, was then packaged and sold on the dark web to the highest bidder. Foreign operatives, private intelligence firms, or worse. Elise sat back in stunned silence, absorbing the scale of the conspiracy. "So we weren't just unlucky," Thomas said, his voice low. "They were hunting you." Monroe nodded grimly. "They knew who Elise was, or at least suspected. And they've likely hit other neighborhoods already." As more information poured in, a chilling reality became clear: Cedar Valley wasn't the first neighborhood to be infiltrated. And it wouldn't be the last. 2 weeks after the Cedar Valley incident, Elise stood under the amber glow of a warehouse light on the outskirts of Kansas City, her breath steady, her expression focused. She was no longer wearing an apron dusted with flour, but a tactical vest fitted with encrypted comms, a sidearm, and a wrist-mounted data reader. The operation was called Emberfall, a multi-agency, cross-state takedown built on the intelligence Elise herself had pieced together. The fake HOA arrests in Cedar Valley had been the crack in the dam. Through burner phone metadata, dark web traffic logs, and a misrouted payment signal, Elise had traced the network to this unassuming distribution center disguised as the shipping hub. Inside, the heart of the operation beat quietly, servers humming with stolen federal data, surveillance gear stacked in crates, and operatives monitoring neighborhoods across several states. These weren't low-level grifters anymore. This was organized, strategic, a black market intelligence cartel. As Elise crouched with her team behind an abandoned semi-trailer, Agent Sandra Monroe's voice crackled in her earpiece. "Team 1, In position. Copy status. Team 2 ready. Elise replied. Eyes never leaving the target. Breach in T-30 seconds. The countdown was tight. Cameras were looped for only 1 minute. Drones buzzed silently overhead, feeding thermal data in real time. Elise reviewed the final schematic one last time, then nodded to the breach team. Go. In a flash of motion, the doors were kicked in. Tactical boots thundered across concrete. The startled suspects barely had time to stand before they were surrounded. Elise moved with precision, clearing rooms, identifying servers marked for seizure. In less than 7 minutes, it was over. Target secure, Elise said into her comm. Breath steady. All suspects in custody. No casualties. What they found inside was staggering: data profiles on hundreds of undercover agents, embedded surveillance blueprints for neighborhoods across 3 states, and payment logs tied to offshore accounts. The FBI called it one of the most sophisticated breaches of domestic security in recent memory, and Elise Whitaker had cracked it wide open. Back in Cedar Valley, life began to settle once more. The news vans left. The police tape came down. The HOA issued a formal statement clarifying that it had never authorized enforcement agents of any kind. People laughed nervously at block parties, exchanging glances that said, "Can you believe that happened here?" But beneath the laughter was something new: solidarity. Neighbors checked in on each other more often. Outdoor security cameras popped up on every street. The teenager, Aiden, who had live-streamed the takedown, started a safety channel online that drew thousands of viewers nationwide. And as for Elise, she returned home quietly, slipping back into her role as the warm-hearted neighbor who baked too many pies and offered to fix your Wi-Fi when it acted up. She never spoke about the mission, never bragged, never let the adrenaline of Kansas City show through her smile. But Thomas knew. He saw it in the way she scanned the horizon when they walked, in the way she memorized license plates without trying, in the way she always sat facing the door at restaurants. At night, when the world was quiet, she would curl up next to him on the couch, her head resting on his shoulder. And for those few peaceful hours, Elise wasn't an FBI agent or a cyberops mastermind. She was just home. The pie in the oven, the quiet street outside, the hum of sprinklers. Cedar Valley would never be the same. But thanks to Elise, it was safer than ever. So, what would you have done if 2 fake officers showed up at your door? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, so you never miss another unbelievable story from the quiet corners of everyday life. Trust me, things are just getting started.